My boss is terrible, period, I gotta punctuate it. I said I loved your shirt, but behind your back I said I hate it. May lightning strike me down if I lied, may no one be around when my tongue's untied. Everybody says it's okay, all the little things I say with my big fat mouth. La 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 la. My big fat mouth.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble. This 4-week series is not about my big fat mouth, however. It is about our big fat mouse. Nothing personal. So many ways to introduce this. I watched like 3 hours of videos. That's one of the problems when we start looking for videos. Good educational points that if you use your mouth incorrectly, it actually affects you physically. Just a lot of social psychology kind of things floating around out there, some comedy stuff. Then they threw profanity in that, so I couldn't use that. But I'm glad I searched, because I think for this first week, we're going to spend 4 weeks on my big fat mouth. Complaining, criticizing, lying, gossiping. We're covering it all the things you do. And I don't want to complain, but I got stuck with the topic of complaining. And I think I found the right video to start us out, to help us focus on the reality that we all do complain a lot. And so let's think about our first world problems.
Every year of every day, each month of the week, thousands, millions, even hundreds of people continue to fall victim to FWPs.
I am so sick.
I have no place to sleep tonight.
So hungry and there's nothing to eat.
Also known as first world problems.
I am so sick of these routine doctor checkups. There's never anything wrong with me.
I have no place to sleep tonight. My friends took the bed and the couch.
So hungry and there's nothing to eat. I mean, on this low-carb diet, sure I can have all the steak I want, but what's steak without the potatoes?
Hi, I'm Ryan Higa. You may remember me from the first FWP campaign. Well, not only are FWPs still around, but they're getting much, much worse.
My phone always dies at my friend's house, and all he has is the old iPhone charger.
Too much clothes. Drawers won't close. It's like having a mountain in my way, and every time I get over it, there's always another. Why did God even have to make speed bumps?
Ignoring the problem does not make it go away.
My hands are so big, I can never reach to the bottom half of the Pringles can.
These people are continuing to suffer every single day.
I just bought this dress yesterday, and now it's on sale.
These FWPs, first world problems, whatever you want to call them, aren't going anywhere unless you do something about them.
My boyfriend didn't text me back, but he just tweeted.
It's like everything I built came crashing down all at once.
The poop already began. Phone not in hand.
I'm so hungry. I already brushed my teeth.
The pool's too cold. The jacuzzi's too hot.
I ordered the salad, but now I'll never taste the soup.
My owner got me bacon treats, but they're not even barbecue flavored.
So there you go, our world. Average person complains easily 15 to 30 times a day without even noticing. Well, probably would burst to 300 to 500 in some of your cases. You know those people. And the bottom line, it does sometimes get really annoying to be in conversations with people that are like that, right? Not that that's true if you're the complainer, but it's always been around. So one of my first thoughts was the Israelites, Old Testament, they've been slaves for 400 years. They had some stuff to complain about. Moses come along. He says, hey, follow me. Slavery's over. That, I think, if I was in those shoes, would be good news. So they leave through, those little 10 plague things. If you don't know that story, read it sometime. It's a big deal. God showed up, let them out. It is interesting, though, and a few wiser Israelites noticed, he led them right up to a sea, the Red Sea, and they could tell by the clouds behind them that Pharaoh changed his mind and was coming after them. So they immediately start complaining. they're really good at them. After one of my old NIV Bibles, I marked it's up to 10 or 12. I should have pulled it out and looked at it. Times the Israelites complain just in that starting point before they even go across and check into the promised land, and the spies come back and say it's bad, and then they complain about that, even not counting that, just 10 or 12 times in the wilderness leading them to that. And they're at this point, and the Old Testament says, they said to Moses, "Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness?" Moses is going, "Dude, did you know that what I just went through with Pharaoh? You had 400 years of slavery. How about thank you, Moses? Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen when we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians." All right. "It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness." Now, this is right before, of course, the Red Sea parts. One of my favorite stories. I love the commentators that try to explain away all the miracles in the Bible. And they go, well, actually, the Red Sea, in some areas they call it the Reed Sea because it was really just really shallow with reeds out, and they kind of waded across. But these expert, brilliant idiots need to read the whole Bible before they make their commentaries, because Pharaoh's army then followed them through, and the entire army, chariots, horses, drowned, apparently in 1 inch of water. So just, ignore so many biblical experts. They're trying desperately to explain away these miracles. The Israelites know what happened. And I just read a couple things, a couple articles a couple months ago about stuff they have found in the Red Sea now, like chariot wheels as an example. It's just fun stuff to study. But the Israelites walk through the thing, sea closes. So what do? Complain they don't have the right water. God says, well, I can get water out of rocks. Now, they hadn't seen that before. Anybody have a rock in your backyard with water? Not unless you're pumping a fountain over it, you don't. They had enough to feed 600,000 men and wives and children. And they're tired of not the right food, so they get manna. Tired of manna, they get quail. It goes on and on and on. Complain, complain, complain. So we see all through history, apparently, humans have been inclined to be negative, to look for the worst, to point out the worst. You're probably in the same situation. I'm in the same situation. Maybe ask yourself the question, what do you most complain about? I put a little list here, and I even asked the question, and for the Connect groups that are meeting this week, what if you saw God as the end recipient of your complaint instead of the person you're complaining about? Because Moses said to the Israelites after the manna thing, your complaints are against the Lord, not against us. And maybe we're blessed like they had been in so many ways, but we're so focused on the negative we don't even see the positives. So maybe that's true in your relationships, maybe. Your boss or your job, your house, lack thereof, or it's not the one you want or doesn't have the stuff you want. Money is tight, politics, the weather is bad, Wi-Fi is slow, nothing to binge watch. I mean, there's some first world problems. The Lions are on again. Actually, complain about that all you want. That's a bad example. I would use the Bears, but they won 2 games already this year. Wow. 2? 4? 3, okay. I actually joked in between with several Spartan fans. I was complaining multiple times during the game yesterday. Until that final touchdown. Yes! But it is funny how easy it is to, on your list, focus on the negative stuff. Why don't we get the field goal? Why are we punting now? Why? Oh, good. Probably the relationship, the boss, the house, the money, the politics, the weather, the Wi-Fi, the TV, Netflix isn't the problem. Probably I am the problem. And my focus has gone away from the goodness of God and the blessings of this life and turned to poor me and the things I have to deal with. So that's kind of our challenge today. And the main text comes from a guy that knows what he's talking about. I love this verse. I hope it sticks in your mind. Maybe there's a key verse each week from this 4-week series you put in your fridge for the month. But this verse I'm going to read in a second will definitely be that verse today. But I wanted to give you the background of the Apostle Paul is the one that wrote it. He knows what it's like to have some stuff that he could complain about. He's just kind of giving his credentials in 2 Corinthians. He says, are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they descendants of Abraham? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I know I sound like a madman, but I've served him far more. Almost sounds like people accuse him of bragging sometimes, but no, he's complaining. I've worked harder, been put in prison more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes because they assumed 40 lashes would kill somebody. 5 times. Paul got that. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. Not a lot of us have that story. Oh yeah, I was stoned last week. Doing pretty good today. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and day adrift at sea. I've traveled on many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced dangers from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities, in the deserts, and on the seas. I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. I've worked hard and long, enduring many sleepless nights. I've been hungry and thirsty, and have often gone without food. I have shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. Then besides all this, I have the daily burden of all my concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my feeling that weakness? Who is led astray, and I do not burn with anger? So Paul's saying, quit your whining. I've had my share of problems. And it's that Paul, which he just seems surrounded by stuff. His dream, we just did Romans this summer. In Romans chapter 1, he actually writes the Romans and says, one of the things I always pray for is the opportunity, God willing, to come see you at last. It's his dream to get to Rome. He's been all over Asia Minor, started all sorts of churches, but I mean, Rome was it. It's the Roman Empire. Because I just pray to get there to share with you. When he writes Philippians, where our text today comes from, he is in Rome. So he said, Paul, your dream has come true. Except he's chained 24 hours a day to a Roman soldier because he's in jail for 2 years. Now, some of us, the Israelites in the Old Testament, probably would have said, woke up every day going, complain. I'm chained to another smelly soldier today. Another one's coming in 8 hours. Another one's coming in 8 hours. My life stinks. But Paul writes several books while he's here in jail in these 2 years. One of them, the book of Philippians, and he doesn't focus on the negative. Makes me think of the story of the monk that signed up for a monastery of complete silence. All you did is once a year come out of your cell. They slid food under the door twice a day. Once a year you could come out, meet with the head priest, and you got 2 words. First year went by, he made it, walked up, the priest said, bed hard. Walked back for another year. Survived a 2nd year, came back for the 2nd year, said, food bad. Went back to cell. So actually survived a complete 3rd year of this nonsense, I think, but I guess he was committed. Came after 3 years. 2 words said, I quit. The head priest says, well, I'm not surprised. All you've done since you got here was complain. So maybe in your world, you're just thinking the negative and have to appreciate that Paul, who had a lot of history, is chained 24/7 to guards. Now, he was a Roman citizen, so he got to stay in the good jail. He was chained to the smart soldiers. But he saw that as opportunity, not a problem. And in that context, he writes the book of Philippians. He says this. Here's this verse. Write it down, post it somewhere this week. Philippians 2:14 and 15. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Do everything. What? Don't you sometimes read scripture and go, why did they use that word? I mean, if you would have said, would you not complain half the time? That would be a much better verse, in my opinion. Right? Everything pretty much covers everything. I studied a lot this week to come up with that sentence. Do everything without complaining or arguing so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Kelsey just shared about Youth for Christ. One of our trips every summer is Project Serve. We've been all over the world. Most recently, because of travel restrictions and stuff, we focused in on a reservation in Montana the last 7 years, I believe. Some of you met Mystic, who's from there. Hi, Mystic. And that trip, our theme verse has always been Philippians 2. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Because you're on a hard work trip. There's a lot of things, especially for our spoiled first world problem teenagers, to complain about. And we say, flex or die. That's our second slogan. Go, they're in charge. We do what they say when they say to do it or when they get around to it. And that's just true at any of our trips anywhere in the world. So do everything without complaining or arguing. There's a lot of spiritual reasons for this verse. I look at this and I see, if you complain and argue, people can criticize you. So maybe some of the very people, Jay said, invite your friends to sit with you in church. Maybe the very same people that you're trying to reach out to see you as a whining, crying, arguing baby. Why do they want to sit in the same room with you, let alone next to you? So if you're giving people a reason to criticize you, it could be hurting your very reputation or testimony as a follower of Jesus. It could be, it says, by implication, dimming your lights, because the charge is to live clean, innocent lives, shining like bright lights. So if you're not living that life, if you're letting complaining be a main part of your personality and in your relationships, I would argue your light dims. And in a dark, perverse world full of people that need a positive moment, some light in their life, they're not getting it. So there's big spiritual ramifications. There's also just, frankly, practical reasons. One of the videos I watched, repeated complaining hardwires your brain to do more complaining. If you find yourself feeling negative, isn't it true that negativity then just runs? Everything is negative. It's literally a biological trigger in there. The more you complain, the easier to be more negative than positive. Confirmation bias then results where you interpret circumstances based on preconceived ideas, which is like saying, I knew it would work out like this. I knew they'd throw that interception. You assume the worst, it comes to be. So complaining, Paul says, hey, I've had my share of opportunity that could certainly be a complainer, but the fact is, my challenge from jail today is whatever you face today, do everything without complaining. So we came up with 2 steps. Just to chew on these in your bulletin. It's not the first line, I'll come back to that. But the next 2 bullets in your bulletin are 2 ways to curb your complaining. First one, if you can change your circumstances, do something about it. If you can change your circumstances, do something. How often do you fret and fume and complain, but don't do anything to make it better? And frankly, there are a lot of situations, maybe especially in relationships, in your work, that you have the power to do something to make it better. And instead of confronting it and getting that done, you just go to somebody else and whine and complain about it. It doesn't mean you can always fix everything. I love the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Said, Lord, grant me the courage to change the things that can change. It actually starts with, I always like to flip it. It does start with giving me the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, the courage to change the things that can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Some of the real peace, I think, comes from just admitting I can't control the whole world. Sometimes I must have to live through something, and that's the second point. But the first one is pray for the wisdom. Is this something I can change? If so, give me the courage to do it. Maybe this is someone I really need to talk to. Maybe it's something I really need to address in my life. Maybe I need to sign up for a workout club. Maybe I need to read a book. Maybe I need to talk to someone I can trust. But I think I can do something about this. If so, do something. Because it's just complaining if you're not talking to the person that can help you do something about it. That's just complaining. But if you take the initiative, have the courage to talk to the right person that might be able to fix or help or at least send you in the right direction to address the problem, A, you start to fix the problem, and B, you won't be complaining about it. You might be able to coach other people along this way. When they come up to you and go, oh, my boss did it. Have you talked to them? Help other people do this same thing. When they're complaining, ask them, have you stopped to ask yourself, is there something you can do about this? and help them do that. Now, secondly, the second line is there are times you can't change your circumstance. And if you can't change your circumstance, then you might as well change your perspective. No use sitting there fretting about it, letting it ruin your life. Find a way to look at it differently. I brought this glass. One of the oldest phrases about complaining or personality profiles is what? Do you see this glass half empty or half full? Our life is like this every single day. And there's a lot of goodness. Preaching twice kind of dries you out. It's good. I can say it's half full of water. I can quench my thirst. Or I can say, why didn't they fill that glass? And live your whole life wondering about maybe something that would never happen instead of appreciating what you literally are holding in your hand. Some of you, maybe if you tend towards the half empty part, you just should get a half-size glass. Just get a smaller glass and quit even looking at that part. But bottom line, our perspective can change everything. Complaining is very contagious, but so is being more optimistic and seeing glass half full. The quote at the top of your page is the quote of the day. Life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I respond. Life is 10% what happens to me, 90% how I respond. It'd be really a shallow message for me to say, hey, if you think there's something bad in your life, suck it up. You're fine. No, we had a couple hundred people over a couple services. There's stuff going on here. We know that. But unfettered complaining will not help. So if it's something you can work on, find something you can do about it or find someone to help you do something about it. But if you can't change that circumstance, work on changing your perspective. It's 90% how you respond. So how could Paul, this guy in prison, be writing this, hey, do everything without complaining. Life's great, isn't it? Hey, isn't Paul still in jail? Listen what he says about it. Philippians chapter 1. I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has helped spread the good news. That is awesome. He'd been arrested in Jerusalem, tried to kill him there, and then they tried to intercept him when he got sent to another king to be judged. They had a gang that was going to kill him in between there. The word leaked out. They protected him from that. He got shipwrecked on the way, bit by a poisonous snake, didn't die from that. The whole ship crashed. They threw everything overboard. They had to float ashore on debris. They still weathered that storm, got to Rome. He's in jail for 2 years. And he says, hey, everything that's happened to me, it's amazing. It's helped the gospel. It's helped spread the good news. That is an incredible perspective. He goes on to say, everyone here, including the whole palace guard, knows I am in chains because of Christ. I can see Paul having a journal where he's written the names of every soldier that's been chained to him over 2 years and whether or not they've responded yet to the love of Christ. I can see the 4 guys out in the golf course that guarded Paul earlier this week. They're going, hey, have you been chained to Paul yet this week? They go, yeah, it was. That guy's amazing. Did he tell you about Jesus? Yeah, he told me. He changed Rome literally from the inside out, right from the palace guard. And when he flipped to Philippians chapter 4, there's only 4 books. They write short books when they're in jail. 4th chapter, verse 22, Paul says this, and all the rest of God's people send you greetings too, especially those in Caesar's household. Isn't that cool? He goes, the church is in Caesar's household. That's why I got arrested. That's why I'm in jail. We're changing Rome. That's changing your perspective. If you can't change your negative circumstances, change your perspective. One more verse I added was we did James earlier this year. We did a whole message on just a crazy verse. It's chapter 1, verse 2. It says, dear brothers and sisters, when trouble comes your way, oh no, not trouble. Complain, right? When trouble comes your way, start complaining bitterly. That would make sense if that's what the Bible said. But it doesn't. It says, when trouble comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. You don't see a problem, you see a possibility. You don't see the obstacles to why you can't do that. You see an opportunity to find something that you can do to change it. In the midst of difficult times, instead of focusing on the difficulty, you look for a positive thing you can do. Webb Smith is one of our founders. I really thought with 2 services, if a story chokes you up in the first one, it's fine the second one. Webb and Lori Smith were in our 19 original members of River's Edge, very active. Has a great past story I won't take time to tell right now, but had come from California, from a drug rehab, into our Ministry of Youth for Christ. Married Lori, who was on our staff, started campus life up in Langsburg, where they built a house, and just water skied together. Great friend. If it's worse than the first service, I quit. Webb was a contractor. So 2008, the big crash, they had a couple big developments kind of just blow up, sold them off. They had a contact because of Lori's work in interior design, and actually were able to establish a Shades and More store in West Palm Beach, Florida. So we always joked about, sure, God called you to Florida, Webb. So down there, I ran this business for about 6 years, but just about 2 years in, they were really killing it. They were winning awards, going on free cruises, passing a vacation every year in Florida in our old age semi-retirement, yeah, whatever it is. But we'd see him every year, get a 2-bedroom condo, spend a weekend, beat Webb like 2-1 in Cribbage all the time. Just destroyed him. You can't do a thing about me saying that. It's pretty fun. No, we're pretty even. But he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I think at 44. And it looked initially maybe 3-6 months, boom. He had the resources, ended up with a specialist in New York City, only place in the country that does some crazy stuff. I won't tell that story right now either, but they did stuff that I never knew you could do. And about him 4 years, doctors were shocked. But I remember him telling me a story a year ago, March. We were down in Orlando, and they came up for the weekend. And he had just gotten, I think it was mid-January of last year, the news that it's over. There's, we did A through Z, and there's nothing else we can do. And whereas Lori or his dad often would travel to New York with him, he happened to be alone. So he's telling me this story last March, and he said, I remember, walking back to the hotel. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? You just walk along going, it's over. And what am I going to do? 2 daughters and a business that's obviously been struggling because he's flying back and forth to New York all the time. And he's going back to the hotel, there's a homeless guy. And he said he remembers the thought going, oh, great, God, now I'm supposed to help a homeless guy when I'm dying of cancer. But went to his room, rested for a while. Pretty late at night, I think it was like 10 o'clock. He's hungry, been in hospital stuff all day long since like 7 in the morning. So he says, leaving the hotel, I remember literally thinking, God, please don't have that homeless guy be there. Because I don't want to deal with this. Complaining, why is that? I got enough to deal with. So, but sure enough, I walked out the hotel, and he's still there. So, hey, come on, guy, let me buy you dinner. Guess what? I can't leave here because I sleep under this bench at night to protect me from the weather. Webb says, well, what do you want? I'll bring it back. And it's funny, he wanted McDonald's. So I got him something to eat because they couldn't eat McDonald's at that point. Got this guy a bunch of McDonald's, like several different things. Came back, sat in the sidewalk, and had dinner with the homeless guy. On the day that he had gotten easily the worst news of his life. I hope you know it's not for emotion we tell that story. It's just the reality that no matter what you are chained to, Paul's chained to guard. Some of you may be chained to health like Webb was. But when it comes down to the point where you can't change your immediate circumstance, you can change your perspective. You can change your perspective. and want River's Edge to be just a cool place. As we dealt with real stuff, and again, I want to reemphasize, with a church this size, there's real stuff sitting here today. And if it's something you can deal with, do something. Ask for our help if we can help. If you can't, change your circumstances. And figuratively, go buy a meal for a homeless guy. Bottom line, if you can do something, do it. Pray for the wisdom. God, what do I do? What step do I take? If you can't, cool. Let's just join arms together, give it to God, and trust that He is good, and He can change your perspective. You can deal with what you're dealing with, and in the meantime, hopefully, have that kind of testimony where a homeless guy benefits too. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you are so good, and what you do is so good. And we realize we live in a fallen world that has its issues. So first I pray for whatever anyone here today might be chained to. It's just taken over their thought process in the last week or months or even years. They find themselves constantly dragged down to think of the negative impact of it. May we just believe today, Lord, even as Paul wrote, Paul in the middle of really negative situations, do everything without complaining or arguing. Just shine the light, make a difference in the world where you're at. And we'll trust you, God, to meet us there, help us fix it when we can, and help us to trust you through it when we can't. For your blessing on each one here today, and what maybe's kind of popped into our mind is something that we could work on to help us stop complaining and to help us start really seeing our world as half full and more. So we pray your blessing today on each one as we walk together in that journey. In Jesus' name, amen.